Do you have the one with the April date?
Yeah. 1 second here.
Maybe it's okay if we don't have that.
Grace, just send that to me real quick. It's not coming up for some reason.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Hold on.
Let's just proceed.
Are we recording?
Yeah. We are, Marcus.
Beautiful. Well, good evening. Happy Wednesday. Thank you all for joining tonight's Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council meeting. I'd like to start by noting that the meeting includes a remote participation of members as authorized under the Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. Our next part of this agenda will be to call roll. See if we have quorum here. I will now call this meeting to order and ask that Grace call the roll so that we may verify the presence of quorum. Council members, when Grace call your name, please say present. I'll also introduce yourself briefly. If you like, you can definitely tell us what's the best thing you had for any meal this month. I'll appreciate that. And state your organization and affiliation as applicable. For any community members on the call, we'll provide an opportunity for you to introduce yourself after the roll call is complete. Grace?
Yes, thank you, Marcus. I did apologize. I did find the little slide that we have to share. So I'm just going to pull that up super quick so that we have that official slide. There it is. All right. And here is the roll. Kavelyn Alondes.
Present. My name is Kavelyn, and I work for the Dakota County Public Health Department in health promotion. Also, I'm associate faculty at the Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health and a Minneapolis resident. And I don't know what the best meal I've had this month is, but I just had roasted vegetables. And Jenny, it made me think of you because I've been in many classes where you taught how to make those. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to get it off. You smooshed it, but.
Thank you. All right, next on the roll is Jenny Breen.
Hi, Jenny Breen, present. I'm a culinary nutrition educator consultant. I teach at the university and do a lot of collaborative work in food systems and health and wellness. And I was teaching in the vocal program, which is a culinary vocational training program this morning, and we made amazing, yummy tacos with mushrooms and local Nixta handmade tortillas, which are amazing if you've never had them. So.
All right.
Thank you. Jason Brisson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Brisson. I work for the city of Minneapolis in our Community Planning and Economic Development Department, or if you ever hear the word CPED, that's us. I work in the economic development side, helping small businesses make their dreams come true, usually on a good day. Some days we do less productive things, but I would say 5-year-olds everywhere are probably cringing, but Brussels sprouts seem to still be in season, and we have totally blatantly ripped off a recipe from Butcher's Tale, which involves like Frank's Red Hot sauce and a couple other ingredients, and so we've been munching on those as they're on their way out of season. So good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you. Keely Cervantes.
Hi everyone, my name is Keely. I work at Conservation Minnesota. I'm the Food and Agriculture Program Manager, and I just was munching on some really good challah bread from Seward Co-op. They've got the Rose Bakery challah right now, and it's have to recommend.
Thank you. Matt Croston. Here. All right, we can always circle back. Jalen Elam, I know, is unable to attend today. Kevin Ellis.
Present. I'm Kevin Ellis. I'm a conservation specialist with Hennepin County. And the best thing I've made this month so far, I made some enchiladas, which went really well with the recent cold snap we had. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys are making me hungry.
Thank you. Nolan Green.
Despite what it says on the screen, I'm Nolan Green, and I work for Twin Cities Co-op Partners as a produce manager. And I, on Sunday, made 3 different Chinese dishes: a zucchini and green bean with black bean and garlic sauce, a toasted sesame shrimp, and chicken and broccoli.
Wow.
Awesome. Rebecca Gross.
Hey everybody, Becca Gross, present. I work for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board as the Community Garden Coordinator. Favorite meal this month, my friend Asa just reopened his bagel shop, Asa's Bakery. Go check it out. It's over by Nokomis Library, and I finally got to go get some bagels. And he makes really good seasonal cream cheese to go with it. So it was a everything bagel with a radish cream cheese, and it was so awesome. And I was so happy. It had been too long.
Thank you. Kim Havey.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Havey. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the City of Minneapolis. And I had a really great tuna dish at one of my old-time favorite places, Eli's at 13th and Hennepin, just Tuesday this week. And it was just perfectly light with like a soy sauce and julienne carrots. And it was just, lightly, what do they call that, seared. Oh, it was lovely. So check out Eli's. They're back open 4 to 11. Nice little location, locally owned place.
It's awesome.
Thank you. Next is Andrea Inoue.
Hi everyone, Andrea Inoue. I'm in the mayor's office, and the best meal I ate this month was really simple chicken teriyaki salad with greens and really juicy red peppers, tomatoes, and carrots. And any meal that I don't have to make myself is my favorite meal.
That's great. Danielle Isaacson.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Isaacson. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and I'll say my meal was just last night. We made some homemade pad thai that was just it was so good, especially because we're kind of demoing our kitchen starting today. So it was like our last meal that we could have, before we have to just eat microwave food for a few weeks. So really, really enjoyed that. And I'll also add, Becca, that Asa moved into my neighborhood, and I went there for the first time a couple weeks ago. It was like an early Friday morning. The line was almost out the door. People are obsessed. It was so good. I'm so happy to have him down here by me.
Thank you. Marcus Carr.
Ooh, Marcus Carr. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the director of programs for Youth Farm in Minneapolis. I'm also your co-chair of the Food Council. Yeah, so I had the most amazing thing last night, and that's why I wanted to hear everybody. I had a recipe sent to me by one of the elders for borscht, made from scratch, and I end up exercising that and having it with some pumpernickel, and just like love the idea of soup on a cold day, especially cabbage and all the goodies in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Kepruseth? I think he said he couldn't come today. Kristen Klinger?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Klingler with the Minneapolis Health Department. I am part of the Healthy Living team, which is focused on chronic disease prevention. So I get to do a lot of work around healthy eating and food access. The first thing that came to my mind was not healthy or a meal. It was a milkshake that I just had from Tipsy Steer on Monday night. It was a sweet and salty milkshake, and I had it for my dinner. I probably will lose my health department credentials for saying that, but it was delicious, and that was the first thing that came to my mind. So
beautiful.
Thank you. Will Lucker?
Hi, everyone. My name is Will Lucker. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Housing Stability Coordinator at CAPI USA, which is a nonprofit that focuses on providing culturally specific food shelf services and wraparound social services for immigrants and refugees. And the best thing I had, very basic, was just pizza that I ordered. It had been a long week, and I just needed something that felt good.
Nice. Pizza from where?
Oh, just Papa John's. Like nothing fancy. I had rewards points that I used.
Nice.
Thank you. Next up is James Miller.
Hi, everyone. My name is James. I use he, him pronouns. I work at the Legal Rights Center, but also have background in youth work and food systems. And for good food in the last month, I recently started cooking with farro for the first time ever, and did like a farro, cherry tomato, basil, little mozzarella ball type of salad, which is really great. So would highly recommend.
Thank you. Leslie Modrak? So you went back on mute, Leslie. There you go.
Okay, good. I'm Leslie Modrak. Hi, everybody. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm a community representative from the Park and Rec Department. In terms of food, I'm going to go with pizza too. There's a really great new small business called Rectangle Pizza, and they're in different parts of Minneapolis, and they make great gluten-free pizza, so I'm able to eat pizza again once in a while. So I guess that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Liz Mullen.
Hi, everyone. Liz Mullen with Chowgirls Catering in Northeast Minneapolis. Also, I'm the founding chef of Minnesota Central Kitchen. Oh man, my husband made me a delicious meal after a long day yesterday that hit the spot, with orecchiette pasta, roasted cauliflower, Calabrian peppers and olives, which was just like perfect, especially because I didn't have to make it. And then my other meal that we just had, which is like one of my favorite pizza places, is Tasty Pizza in Columbia Heights.
Great, thank you. Devon Nolan.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
Good evening. Devon Nolan with Betnoir Consulting, and I manage the West Broadway Farmers Market here in North Minneapolis, and I am the co-chair along with the illustrious Marcus Carr. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Devon. Helen Snows. think I saw you hop on, Helen, or did I not? I did. I see you there. Hello, Helen. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. I'll come back around to you. All right. And last but not least is Julie Wong.
Hi. Okay. My favorite meal actually is coming up hopefully soon because I just bought a variety of eggs and I'm really excited about them. I bought goose eggs, turkey eggs, and duck eggs, along with heirloom chicken eggs. I have no idea how to cook them, but I'm pretty sure they'll be very delicious. And I will post them on Instagram and oh, wait, I'm supposed to introduce myself. I'm the founder of U Fisheries. We specialize in salmon jerky, making salmon jerky as well as smoked salmon. So we have Instagram account. So if you're interested, I will post it with a photo of the eggs coming up this weekend, just because it's Easter.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's delicious. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think Helen dropped off to try to reconnect, so we will come back to her when she arrives. And that is the rule. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you see Brandon? Sorry, Grace. Did you see
Oh, I'm
Brandon
sorry.
on as well?
Brandon Griffin, would you like to, you are here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Sorry about that. I was having sound problems when we started.
That's all right.
Brandon Griffin, I put it in the chat too, but I'll say it out loud. Brandon Griffin, he, him, his pronouns. The Senior VP of Operations at the Sane Foundation. My most recent favorite meal was this last Sunday for Masters Sunday. We had a Masters themed party and had azalea homemade cocktails and pimento cheese sandwiches and a bunch of wings. So it was super fun. You can only eat about one pimento cheese sandwich though before it gets kind of gross. We made it happen.
It's beautiful.
Delicious. Thank you. And before we move on to community intros, we did finally manage to find the right slide that we're supposed. Oh, wait, just kidding. Helen is here. Helen, introduce yourself now that you're back on, and then we're going to do the slide that we have to do the correct way for clerk office purposes. But Helen, go for it.
Thanks. Sorry, I was having some technical issues. Hi, everyone. I am Helen Schnoes. I am the Minneapolis Public Schools rep and work with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. We made homemade turkey meatballs and spaghetti. That was really good recently, as good as leftovers too. And because I know there's a lot of pizza talk, my husband informed me we're having Boluto tonight. So nothing's better than some Boluto with your homegrown council meeting. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, that for real is our entire role. And Abdi Khalik, if you want to pull up this slide just so IT can edit it in. Hit the pause.
Voila.
All right, thank you.
That's beautiful. God, you guys, so like I've been running all day and I haven't eaten yet. So all this talk of food, it was just my own little thing. Plus this summer, we're going to be doing some potlucks. I'm looking forward to all the recipes. At this time, if there are any community members who've called in or it's on this meeting right now, please feel free to unmute yourself and briefly introduce yourself with your name, your organization, as it applies to you. Anybody on the call?
Hi, my name is Nicole Bueller and I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director for the Harrison Neighborhood Association. And I recently had a steaming pile from the Wienery on the West Bank. For those who don't know what a steaming pile is, it's French fries with mock duck and shredded melted cheese, onions, green pepper, baked beans, and coleslaw.
Oh, I hope you got some leftovers.
Nope, I got it. And you can get a number, you can get a 1 potato or a 2 potato. And yeah, I did not have leftovers on the potato.
I know I'm going to be seeing you. I'm just trying to push my luck. Yeah, welcome, Nicole. Anyone else on the call?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Lenars-Coy, she, her pronouns. I am with the food group. And I got to go on the pizza train and go with Northern Fires, my neighborhood pizza joint.
What? Yes. I'm taking notes of all these. Welcome, Sophia. Anybody else?
Hello.
Oh, we got a race.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Mariah Daniels. I'm a student at the University of Minnesota studying food systems. And something I ate recently that was pretty good was chicken and wild rice soup.
Ooh. Yes, that's medicine. Anyone else?
I'll say hi quick. My name is Kirsten Weigel. I use she, her pronouns, and I am brand new with Minneapolis Public Schools as the Farm to School Coordinator. So happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stick with the soup and the comfort food. I would say beef, barley, vegetable soup.
Yeah, welcome, Kirsten. This is great. I've been meaning to meet you. I'll see you sometime this summer.
That
Anyone
sounds
else?
great.
Yeah.
I can kick off staff intros. My name is Grace Rude. My pronouns are she, her. I am with the Homegrown Minneapolis team here at the city of Minneapolis. And the best thing that I've eaten recently, oh, that's a really good question. Well, I'll say the best thing I'm going to eat is tonight. One of our dear family friends has a community cooks thing where she like cooks a bunch of food for people and they come and pick it up. So I'm excited to see what it is. It's going to be a surprise. So always something tasty and cooked with lots of love.
And I'm Patty Bowler with the Health Department, Director of Policy and Healthy Communities, overseeing Homegrown. And I went to the Dakota last night for a jazz concert. And yeah, and I had shrimp and grits, and it was really, really good. Really good.
Can you say what it was again? I didn't catch that.
Shrimp and grits.
Got it.
How about Abdi Kulik or Tong?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Abdi Kulik Sahal. I am a public health specialist with the health department. I'm currently fasting and hearing all this food is wonderful. I love it. I'm excited to eat tonight. What I recently had with my mom, I did with my iftar with my parents and had some wonderful samosas, and I'm craving that. So definitely big fan of samosas.
Hey everyone, this is Tong. I provide administrative support to Homegrown, she, her, hers. And for me, it's not really a meal, but I ate a really good orange. It was just really good. And like, I'm a big fan of fruits, so.
Beautiful. Is there anyone there? Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Melissa. I am a former Minneapolis resident and I'm a student at the University of Minnesota Mankato, and I'm studying food insecurity and food access in the Twin Cities area. And I would say the best thing I had recently was at a Hawaiian fusion restaurant over the weekend down south of the city. I had a blackened mahi sandwich and it was delicious.
Wow. Ooh. Okay. Is there anybody else from community on this call? Beautiful. Well, I just want to say thank you so much to all the community members for joining us in tonight's meeting. With that, we'll proceed to our agenda, a copy of which will be posted on the public access to the city legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. That's Larry, India, Mike, Sierra, www.minneapolis.mn.gov. Okay, on to the next item on our agenda. The first item of business is to amend the motion for the adoption of our agenda for tonight's meeting and the acceptance of the minutes for March. May I have a motion from the city council member to approve the agenda with the amendment? Please, is anyone
So
there?
moved, Griffin.
Griffin. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Ooh.
You go for it. Brandon, was that you? All right.
We got to raise Brandon. We got a second. We have a proper motion before us. And is there any discussion before Grace take roll again? Okay. With that, I'll ask Grace to take roll for the motion.
Marcus, are we gonna, I think what we normally do is take roll and we also accept the minutes at the same time.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that we were amending, we're
Okay.
accepting the
Oh, got it.
tonight and also accepting the minutes from March.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, Grace, I'll give it to you.
All right, thank you. Evelyn Alondez,
Aye.
Jenny Breen,
Aye.
Jason Brisson,
Aye.
Keely Cervantes,
Aye.
Sorry. Matt Croston, Jalen Elam, Kevin Ellis,
Aye.
Nolan Green,
Aye.
Brandon Griffin,
Aye.
Rebecca Gross,
Aye.
Kim Havey,
Aye.
Andrea Inoue,
Aye.
Danielle Isaacson,
Aye.
Marcus Carr,
Aye.
Kevin Kapraseth, Kristen Klingler,
Aye.
Will Lucker,
Aye.
James Miller,
Aye.
Leslie Modrak,
Aye.
Liz Mullen,
Aye.
Devon Nolan, Devon, I'll come back to you. Helen Schnoes,
Aye.
Sorry, I'm here. I couldn't get off mute. Aye.
no worries, thank you, Devon. And Julie Wong.
Aye.
Thank you. That is going to be, if I can do the math, 20 yays and 3 absent. Thank you.
Beautiful.
That motion passes.
Yay. The motion passes. Now, we have some treats for tonight's meeting. The first presentation is going to be the Minneapolis food security presentation. That's going to be led by Sophia, who's the executive director of the food group. And I'll pass this on to you, Sophia.
Wonderful, thanks. I do have a little PowerPoint for those who like a visual option. So let me figure out if I can share my screen here.
Awesome.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So after hearing some of you introduce yourself, there are many of you who could give this presentation just as well, if not more deeply and richly than I can. But I appreciate the opportunity to come into this group and kind of give a little bit of a higher level, maybe zoom out overview. I'll speak a little bit about the food group, but definitely we'll leave time for questions and dialogue. I have gotten to work with many of you over the years, so this I'll be quick on this part. But basically, we're a local food equity nonprofit. We have three main areas of work. We work in hunger relief. We also work in affordable grocery with Fair for All and Twin Cities Mobile Market. And then we have Big River Farms. That's a farmer training program, land-based for immigrant and refugee farmers. So some core values that really underpin our work: nutrition, local food, equity, community engagement, and systems change. So lots of values alignment with all of you fine folks. I wanted to just give a little bit of a context on hunger a little bit more broadly. So again, really zooming into the food insecurity part of our work for this conversation with you. 2021 marks the 11th consecutive year for Minnesota kind of exceeding the 3 million visits to food shelves. For a while now, seniors have been and continue to be the fastest growing group of food shelf users. A lot of children and seniors continue to experience hunger, and certainly the disparities along racial lines continue to be the case, with Black and Latinx households reporting food insecurity at much higher rates than white households. The pandemic obviously kind of changed that reality. So there was significant rates of food insecurity, but today we have 1 in 9 Minnesotans experiencing hunger compared to 1 in 11 pre-pandemic. In Minneapolis, I don't have any beautiful data slides, so let me just say that to begin with. But the community needs, I think, are really at an interesting point right now where, and I'd love to leave some time at the end to have more of a dialogue with you all about this. I think it's really hard to kind of exactly understand community need right now around hunger and access to free food. There are some communities and some organizations that have seen incredibly rapid growth in the last few years of what need looks like. There are others that haven't. I've found it's really case by case specific, but I think certainly what we do know is that there's plenty of COVID relief programs at the federal level that are expiring or have expired. And there's this reality of rising inflation. And so just understanding that gas is going up, food is going up, and you know, as all of us know, right, when those basic needs costs go up, that's going to hit families and households on limited budgets much more quickly and much more directly. And what we hear, what we see at the food group is, you know, food costs are definitely rising across the board, some more than others. You can see, you know, like vegetable oil at the wholesale level for us has increased 85% in cost. So just figuring out how we can provide those healthy, culturally relevant staples in a cost-effective way at an organizational level is a challenge. Again, many of you on the call know that firsthand at different organizations you work with, but then also how that hits at the household level is pretty dramatic. Food, again, this is kind of like preaching to the choir, but some of these slides are more revelatory for people who don't think about it as much, but food often is that most flexible part of a household budget. And so when things like gas or other costs go up, it tends to be where people have to start cutting back and making really tough decisions, often sacrificing nutrition to make ends meet. So that's a little bit of painting the picture in a pretty brief and vague way. But what I wanted to talk a little bit more about with you is kind of the community's response, especially in Minneapolis, that's been happening in that emergency food space. And again, some of you know firsthand doing some of the direct service work in community. But the last 2.5 years has seen more innovation in how free food is distributed than I've ever seen in the 15 years that I've gotten to do this work. And Minneapolis really has been an epicenter for that. After the murder of George Floyd and the unrest, I think food was a really powerful way that community came together to care for one another and show up for each other. And so just wanting to highlight some of the innovative food distribution methods that came about during that time, some of which are no longer around, but some threads I think are still continuing, and it's really important that we pay attention to how to support them well. So we called them our emerging partners. There were lots of groups that came to partner with the food group that, again, were doing food distribution maybe for the first time in the summer of 2020 and had never done that before, whether it was neighborhood groups or more grassroots associations, right? There were pop-up distributions. The definitions of those change depending on who you're talking to, but I often think of a pop-up more as maybe it's an established food nonprofit or an organization that does food work, but is going to a new location where they haven't gone before to really increase access and go where people are. There were a lot of grassroots-led efforts, again, neighborhood associations, more loosely affiliated groups, non-501c3s, right? Not traditional nonprofits doing food distribution. And I'm sure, you know, many of you have talked about this too, but a really marked rise in mutual aid and a really different concept of neighbors helping neighbors and trying to maybe rethink some of the power dynamics that have often been inherent in how food is distributed before. So in addition to the wide variety of models that we have seen these last couple years, the food group has really been trying to pay specific attention to culturally connected foods and ensuring that the foods that we're distributing are foods that represent the cultures and the culinary traditions of folks who are receiving them. So, you know, we got this quote from one of our partners, and I think it's a really profound way to just think about it, but that the food can make you feel like you're seen and you belong. And so how can we make sure that these different food distribution efforts that are happening in Minneapolis have foods that are reflective of folks? At the food group, we also are really trying to emphasize local food. So when we can purchase locally and keep that money flowing to, again, you know, as so many of you are building that local food system that we all want to see. So for us, it was really trying to prioritize purchasing locally, and then even more specifically, trying to prioritize purchasing locally from BIPOC farmers whenever possible. The other thing I wanted to share with the group, just to do a little more context setting, is we recently partnered with a consultant to kind of try to help us understand this, again, changing landscape and some of the lessons that we could learn. Especially, we were curious to kind of compare some of these emerging partners, which again, the language kind of sucks, but these groups who are a little bit newer to the food space, or at least newer to working with the food group, compared to some of our partners who've been around a long time. And I'll just share briefly a few of those themes that emerged. So one theme that emerged from both groups, right, is that food is a way to build community, right? So that even more than just getting people the sustenance they need, it really is a way to build community. So we've got a quote here from one of our agency partners, or, you know, a more established nonprofit that, you know, at our free farmers market, it feels so homey and normal, set up outside under tents, gives families and volunteers a chance to talk and share recipes. And then, you know, from a newer partner talking about serving food and drinks to people as they waited in line. We made deep connections and don't see ourselves as being different than the people there. We get to know people, talk to people, be careful not to other and create a barrier between people there. And I think it's an interesting thing, right? There's a lot of commonality in the thread, but then there's also difference of, right, you have this, I think in food distribution, there have been kind of the volunteers and the helpers, right, versus the recipients of food for a long time. And so one thread we've seen is really interesting in the more mutual aid approach is that there really is less of that dynamic and that dichotomy. Another theme that really emerged from chatting with our partners is this idea of solidarity and trust. And so trust and relationships are important right? Again, both for emerging partners and more traditional partners, but it's framed a little bit differently. So again, in that mutual aid mentality, this idea that we're not different, right? We're standing in solidarity. I may need food and be giving food at the same time, right? We're historically for more of our long-standing partners, it's building trust and relationships by volunteers who can kind of reach across and connect with participants. So again, another theme that came out is just this idea of being in community versus for community, right? And what that looked like. And I think as we've all experienced, COVID shifted so many distribution models, I think for good and ill, especially when it comes to the food distribution thing. But one thing that we did notice is there had been such a move in kind of the hunger relief community to make it feel as much like a grocery shopping experience as you could. And what came out of COVID, I think, is that sometimes that is absolutely a great model. And for other times that other people's lives, there's something really nice about a drive-up model or a pop-up outside or a little bit quicker, more anonymous model. And so this sense that I think we need a real variety of options to meet a variety of needs. The other thing that came up as we were talking with partners and just kind of thinking about the last couple of years and what's happened in food distribution is this concept of white privilege and racism and just how race plays out in this work, right? And so the idea of disparities and power differentials of staff, volunteers, and participants, especially when the kind of ethnic makeup of volunteers and staff might be different than participants and what that looks like or the dynamics of that. We also, in our kind of landscape scan that we conducted, we could definitely draw some lines to funding disparities, right? That are, again, kind of perpetuating that same underinvestment in communities of color that has underpinned, our food system since its founding. And then the other thing that we're really thinking about a lot is this tension of how to make these efforts sustainable. So again, many of the pop-ups that emerged in the summer of 2020 do not exist anymore, right? Some of them do and are really trying to explore what this mutual aid approach to food distribution might look like long-term. But there's a tension because how to make something sustainable often means that you're going to force it to conform to some of the traditional structures that have long existed in the hunger relief community, because that's how you get the commodity food or some of those different grant opportunities. So just thinking about how we can really build on some of the amazing innovation that happened and that was really community led, while finding funding to support the good work that's happening. So looking ahead, the food group is continuing to partner with with a wider variety of food distributors than we have in the past, and really trying to adapt how we partner based on how people are looking for us to show up. But I'm excited to just kind of open it up and talk a little bit more with all of you too of what we see looking ahead and how we can invest. Because again, I think some of the traditional funding mechanisms or traditional partnerships that have underpinned the free food distribution system are not in perfect alignment with some of the values and innovations that we've seen come out, especially in some of the work that's happening in Minneapolis. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you. So thank you so much for listening.
That is amazing. Good job, Sophia. What you guys are doing is like a picture in the work that we are doing here on the Food Council, and I really applaud you for this presentation. Are there any questions or?
Looks like Will has a question.
Nice.
Hi, yes, thank you. So, Sophia, I actually had a couple of questions and observations from the presentation because doing a lot of work in mutual aid spaces, both in housing and in food security. So first, can I just ask what the sampling method was used for the numbers of the 1 to 9 versus the 1 to 11 Minnesotans living in hunger, and were unhoused communities included in that?
Oh, you're going to take me deeper, Will, than I'm going to be able to go. But it's a great question. I think that is a DHS number. I want to say. So I do not know. I would assume that it is an undercounting situation for unhoused populations, as I would assume most of those statistics are. But I don't know the answer to that, to be honest.
Okay, and yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I was wondering, and then you were talking a lot about mutual aid groups and barriers to entry for them, and it's funny that you mentioned that because this has literally been the subject of most of my conversations for outreach in the last few months. So I guess the main questions that I have is like, what power does this group that we have or this organization have to actually address a lot of these barriers? Like the main one I have is a lot of community gardens groups that focus on feeding unhoused communities. Like they don't have the millions of dollars that are required for the upfront cost of like leasing land from the city. So unless people have corporate and or nonprofit sponsorships, which even nonprofits don't always have the funding for, like they aren't able to be established. And I guess the reason I bring that up is you also mentioned about like a trust and attention between like mutual aid groups and traditional orgs on the ground. So I guess I'll give you a chance to answer the first part of that question because this is a wider conversation that I think I would need to have with you offline.
Yeah, and I don't think I'll be answering, but I'll be responding. So that's a start, but happy to talk more. I mean, I think, right, so there's so much that it brings up, right? There's so much in the sort of like nonprofit industrial complex and in the hunger relief system and its ties to, right, big ag and corporate interests and racism
Yeah.
and right, you could go to all the layers as deep as you want and should, right? We all should and have to. And I have to remind myself that I have to ask, how are we going to make progress, right? And what are we going to do today to make it better than yesterday? And so at least at the food group, we have been really trying to re-examine our own barriers to partnerships that we create ourselves, right? So like, what are our institutional barriers? So historically, we existed to serve 501c3 food organizations, right? And we realized we made that up, right? That you can be an amazing organization and make a really deliberate decision that becoming an established nonprofit is not right for my group right now. It's not what our community is asking us to do. So then it's our job as the food group to adapt, right? And partner differently. But it does take trust, and it takes, first of all, trust that organizations on the ground know what's best, right? And it takes time for organizations to begin to trust that we will show up, right? And that we can provide food in a way that is timely and isn't going to create stress. So I think it's very complicated and it's a resource sharing question. And to me, I think it is really important that we establish and think creatively about partnerships. So how can more well-resourced organizations think differently about partnership, but that only works if there's enough values alignment that people aren't forced to change to fit into the funding, if that makes sense. So that's sort of my initial thought.
Yeah, I hear that. And I guess the reason I asked these two questions specifically is because housing side, in case anyone didn't know, Rent Help MN has been defunct essentially since January, but as of just this past week, MHFA, the sort of state housing organization that was managing those funds, has basically told us to ramp down our efforts of helping people process old applications that had made it before that cutoff. So yeah, everyone thought that the eviction crisis was going to be coming in July, and instead it's now coming in April/May. And so I guess I wanted to draw attention to the underrepresentation of unhoused folks and the fact that there aren't a lot of good pipelines that a lot of us in nonprofit spaces, Cappy included, seem to really have in pouring money into those communities. And so I guess, thanks to you, Sophia, I guess I just wanted to pose to the group, like, do any of us have either citywide institutional ties or just ties within our own orgs that we could potentially move to address some of this with?
I think we got someone with their hands raised right now. Let me see here.
Yeah, I believe it's Helen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Hi, Sophia. Thanks for the presentation. It was really great having been in some early conversations about food security response to see kind of the evaluation you've done. And I'm just curious how the presentation you gave us kind of is factoring into, is this a dog and pony show kind of that you're taking on the road? Who else might you give it to? Or can we help you share it with other people?
For you. I made it just for you.
Because I definitely know some people at the state that I would love to hear what you're hearing and seeing, especially because you receive state dollars to try to do some of this great response work. So that's so interesting. That's not, but I would love for more people to hear what you shared with us today.
It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, you're all involved in the work. I mean, many of you are involved deeply in all of this work in a variety of ways. The thing that's interesting and why, again, I wanted to share some of the landscape scan results with you all, just because I know this group is, you're wonderfully data driven in a really good way. I haven't shared them widely yet. And part of it is, and again, I'm open to ideas, and anyone who wants to connect offline, I don't want to create unnecessary tension between existing really good organizations that are doing hunger relief work and some of these newer models. But I also think it's really important to highlight the innovation and some of the different thinking, right? But what came out in the survey is that there is plenty of tension, right? Which is not new news, and that there sometimes can feel like there's duplication or right, or like the scarcity mentality, right? That that can happen. And so I think I'm just also trying to be quite aware of that dynamic of wanting to lift up the good work that's happening in both models without sort of putting them in conflict with one another, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful. We also have a request from Will. If you can share your contact in our chat. I'm sure a lot of people would like to, connect with you at some point here. I really appreciate this, by the way. I think we need to work hard at creating safe spaces for us to ask these hard questions. I don't think we have enough time at the Food Council. I just want to be respectful of the time, but I am super awakened by your presentation. Jenny, I believe you had your hand raised.
Sorry, I think that was an accident, but I will, since you called on me. Again, also thanks, Sophia. It's been really a treat for me to watch you do amazing work for so many years. I really appreciate your acknowledgement of the work, the internal work that needs to happen in organizations for values alignment. And I think even beyond doing this presentation, I think it would be really compelling for us to think about how to, and I know we did this a lot in the Food Justice Network, but how to think about how to help organizations do that work so that collaboration can happen instead of people feeling threatened by each other's work. So, and I feel like you are somebody who's been really leading in that area. So that would be, if I were going to seek you out, that would be what I would be asking of you, is your guidance there.
Yeah. We need it. We need more of you.
Oh my gosh, that's not true. And you could ask a lot of people about that, but I'm very grateful to get to be, you know, in collaboration. Like the only way any of this happens, right, is in deep collaboration and in collaboration in groups like this, but then also in collaboration with community that's doing direct work, right, on the ground. And I know some of you represent that too. But at the food group, at least, we know like we have to be responsive, you know.
One thing I wanted to say is like, you know, I realize the community responds to some of the, you know, the work you're doing around hunger and things like that. I want to hear, we're going to talk about this at another time, but I wanted to hear more, how can urban ag on the ground in these community spaces, growing food and community, be a part of that, adding to what you're distributing through your work, but also helping us reduce waste in green spaces, because we're growing a lot of healthy foods and we're, you know, trying to engage people around that. But at the end of the season, I usually look around and I wonder, man, what else could we have done to, you know, use up all this produce? And anyways.
Yeah, I think there's good linkages there. I think both on like how we can better link like emerging farmer training with urban ag education, but then also how do we make sure that the food has a nice closed loop, especially when it's culturally specific? How can we keep it in community? And I think there's a lot of good potential there.
It's beautiful.
Hopefully the food action plan is going to lead in that direction.
Yay. That's why we need your guidance a little bit. I'm looking forward to that, actually. Any other questions? Okay, well, I just want to say thank you so much, Sophia. This has been, you know, opened my books, opened my mind, and I'm excited about this summer. All the good foods, new people, and just engaging people around being outside and in the sun, and you know, serving each other. Our next treat for tonight will be the City of Minneapolis Food Insecurity Funding. That's going to be led by Patty Bowler and Abdi Khalik. I'll pass it on to you guys if there's no objection.
Sounds good. Thank you, Marcus. And thank you, Sophia. I wish we had like real treats to share with you, but maybe when we're back in May, we'll have some real treats, you know, food treats. So this is, thank you, Sophia. And we just wanted to tag on to this presentation and talk just a tiny bit about what the Homegrown Minneapolis initiative has done in the area of food insecurity. And so with me today is Abdi Khalik Sahal, who introduced himself earlier. He has been hired through some grant dollars that the city received to really oversee some of the food security work that we're doing. And so we've got a short PowerPoint to provide. And so Abdi Khalik, if you want to put that up, that'd be great. Thank you. And if you go to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, I represent a public health department, and this is a, you know, I don't even have to say this, but I'm going to because it's so evident that food security, it's a social condition of health. And we really need nutritious food to be healthy, and food insecurity worsens health disparities. And so that's why I think we jumped in with both feet to work on food security as a result of the pandemic and also the 2020 civil unrest. So if you go to the next slide, Abdi Khalik. So Tamara, who is no longer with us as a city employee, was just very instrumental in helping the city respond to food insecurity. And again, we worked very collaboratively with Sophia's organization, with Second Harvest, also with the mayor's office, with the park board, with our neighborhood and community relations group. to kind of put together our own food insecurity response, first at Corcoran Park, and then secondly, it moved to Powderhorn Park. And so we were able to provide food for at least the city effort from June of 2020, or maybe it was July of 2020 to probably January of 2021. And we had a lot of Latinx families that came through our particular operation. And I mention this because it's a little unusual for the city to provide this level of direct service, but we saw it was a key need for the community. And eventually this whole operation was taken over by the Sane Foundation that Brandon represents. Mm-hmm. In addition, we started to convene food insecurity partners, like a number of the pop-ups that Sophia mentioned, on a regular basis. And we continued doing that into 2021, while also connecting with some of our state level partners who really wanted to know what was happening on the ground. We were able to access some of the city's CARES funding. And so we allocated $953,000 to 39 organizations in late 2020. And most of those expenses were used for infrastructure improvements and food. Unfortunately, we couldn't use it for staffing. And we put this out in, I think, October of 2020. We had to have responses back and invoices paid by sometime in November of 2020. And we, again, I continue to apologize to our partners for this really quick turnaround. But we wanted to make sure that we were trying to maximize this investment. And it was a quick turnaround because if we didn't use this money, the city would lose the money. And then kind of an innovation that happened just in City Hall was developing a food shelf permit for our pop-ups. So we worked with CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development, to create a community distribution permit for the pop-up operations happening within Minneapolis. So normally a conventional food shelf license, it takes a lot of capacity to apply for and maintain. And many of the pop-ups didn't have this kind of capacity. So this is why it was created. So we wanted to ensure that food safety rules and regulations were being thought about as these pop-ups and mutual aid organizations did their work. And the food shelf permit for pop-ups cost $1. And then lastly, just this last, I guess it would have been fall, or I guess it was August. Time flies when you're having fun. We were able to get some more funding from our city government, and we allocated a second round of funding, about over $1 million to 13 organizations. And Abdi Kalik is really going to talk about what this funding accomplished. So we cobbled together community block grant dollars. We had a special CDC grant that one of my colleagues wrote that had a big food security component to it. And then we were able to use the American Rescue Plan funding that the city had. So Abdi Kalik, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Patty. Thank you, Patty. So more about our contracted partners. So right now we are working with 13 different community organizations to use those funds that we received from the CDC, CDBG, and ARPA. These 13 partners were basically selected from an RFP we put out last year. And now basically I want to show kind of, since we have time, just who they are and who they're serving. So we have Asian Media Access, serving the North Minneapolis to Asian American and Somali American immigrants. We have Issaroon, serving the Cedar Riverside, Phillips, South Minneapolis neighborhood, serving Somali and BIPOC communities. We have the Little Earth Residents Association, serving Little Earth housing residents. North Point Health and Wellness Center in North Minneapolis, serving is basically serving people within the federally designated promise zone and underserved communities in North Minneapolis. We have the Pillsbury United Communities in the Phillips neighborhood in Cedar Riverside, operating out of Brian Coyle and Wade House, among other places. The Southside Family Nurturing Center in South Minneapolis, Midtown and Little Earth, that's where they're serving. Cannon Pronis, North Minneapolis. Clues, Latino communities in Minneapolis, Lake Street and Phillips neighborhood. Eastside Neighborhood Services, which is a citywide operation serving all the different neighborhoods in Minneapolis. Lost Citizen Center, which mostly North Minneapolis, and then food distributions will be kind of outside of Minneapolis. Minneapolis American Indian Center, neighborhood surrounding the facility, and then Sabathani Community Center in South Minneapolis, and Shiloh Cares, North Minneapolis. So the ARPA funds we had contracted to each of these individuals, are $500,000 for the ARPA users, $355,000 for the CDBG users, and $350,000 for CDC. Just a little over $1 million we used for this RFP to contract these partners. Basically, providing food security resources and food shelter, having like food shelves all around the city, which is our plan to try to make it sustainable and make it something that people are going to be able to come to on a regular basis. We have applied for additional funding through ARPA once this funding ends, and that's something we're looking forward to in the future. But on the horizon here, if I can click to the right, yes, on the horizon, our goals are to now have a better understanding of Minneapolis specific food insecurity needs, leverage additional funding, and also use the Minneapolis Food Action Plan to kind of understand more about what's going on in Minneapolis. And with I can go back, I can start from the front. So, oh, sorry. So yeah, continuing to survey the community and local food shelves and what they need, trying to get a clearer picture of food security needs and trends from Minneapolis, and then looking for additional funding, such as through the American Recovery Act funding or through other federal state resources. And now, most of us know about the Minneapolis Food Action Plan, but for those community members who don't know, the city of Minneapolis has been developing a 2030 roadmap toward a more equitable, climate-resistant, resilient, just, and sustainable local food system and local food economy. There are 6 pathways that act as categories to organize the many strategies proposed to help the city navigate and prioritize its goals. Through this survey, we are seeking feedback on these pathways and strategies for the city to improve local food system. So basically, within the Minneapolis Food Action Plans, there's like a pathway addressing local food supply. That's really important. And there's a really important food justice principle addressing food accessibility and allowing people to grow their own food in many different pathways and many different opportunities to do that. So that's basically what we have going on at the city regarding food insecurity. We can answer any questions we have, but that's the end of the presentation. A lot of information thrown at you.
Yeah, that was amazing though, man. Like, it's good seeing what action's been taken to at least help some of the things that are moving us along here. Trying to prevent this. These 2 presentations are just like mind blowing to me. One question I have, is there a place we can find any of this, the presentations themselves or any other data that's being thrown at us right now from Sophia and you guys, Patty?
Yeah, the presentation, I think both Sophia's presentation and our presentation is in LIMS in the agenda. In the link, it should lead you to a PDF of both of our presentations. I can put that in the chat as well.
I think it's already in the chat.
Nice.
I think, yeah, so.
Is anyone manning the chat, right? I'm sorry. I was so caught up in the numbers. It's so great. I see some of their hands raised. Andrea had her hands raised.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Patty and Abdikalik. I just wanted to jump in and say thank you to the health department team who really took on this emergency food security work in a way that the city of Minneapolis, hadn't been previously set up to take on, and really jumped in this emergency time. And in the mayor's office, we were also seeing that this was a place that we needed to be involved more directly in this emergency period of time. And both, I think Patty undersold it a little bit, that the CARES funds and the ARPA funds, can be used for a wide range of recovery efforts. And that making these food security funds a priority was thanks to the advocacy in part from the Food Council and from the health department folks. And we were happy to be able to have a way to address that need in the short term in the mayor's office. And CARES funds in particular, we were pretty involved in directly. And as Patty mentioned, that those funding, we had a strict deadline on that funding. And one thing I just wanted to mention was that while it would have gone away if we hadn't spent it, we could have spent it on something else. And it was really important to us in the mayor's office and to the health department that like, we need to get this money on the ground for this particular use during this period of time to support the work that's happening in the community. So I just wanted to emphasize that a little bit and say I was grateful to be part of that collaborative process to bring those funds to bear in important community work.
Could not have done this without the mayor's office. I'll just say that.
That's beautiful. Are there any other questions or comments?
So you've got your hand.
Oh, yeah, Nicole.
Yeah, you know, it strikes me that you know, a lot of the food insecurity that people are facing is, you know, the direct result of rising housing costs. And one of the things that Harrison Neighborhood Association has really been working on is rent control. And so I'm wondering, like, from this group, like what the intersection is potentially around, you know, housing policy and moving strong renter protections and dealing with that issue as it relates to food insecurity.
That's a big question. And I'm going to just, well, Andrea, sorry to put you on the spot, but Andrea also works a lot on housing. So I don't know if you've got a response or maybe not.
Sure. At the city, we're working on a lot of different aspects of addressing the affordable housing crisis across the affordability spectrum, you know, addressing the needs of our unsheltered residents and working on permanent supportive housing, investing a record amount of dollars in that work over the last 4 or 5 years to try to get more deeply affordable units in the mix, because that's the highest need and where we see the biggest gap in between what exists currently and what's there. In terms of housing policy, we've done a wide suite of renter protection over the last few years, including most recently the right to counsel, which we also have put some ARP funding towards. So it's an example of really important competing interests for different priorities that are all really important to make sure that folks have access to legal representation. In terms of rent stabilization, there is a proposal on the table for this week at council to move forward with a working group that will do the policy evaluation and the stakeholder engagement to look at what a rent stabilization policy could look like here in Minneapolis after the charter vote on that in November. And so we're working on a wide range of things. The Housing Advisory Committee does a lot of work similar to this Food Council in terms of advising the city and council.
Leslie Modrak calling from Sioux Line Community.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just mentioning that the Housing Advisory Committee does a sort of similar kind of work that the Food Council does, but particularly around engaging with the mayor and the council members on housing policy and housing investments that the city does as well. So a similar kind of form as this, but specifically focused on housing.
I hope that does that answer your question, Nicole?
Yes and no. I guess I was kind of more maybe interested in, you know, potentially exploring what collaboration would look like in terms of, you know, it just feels like a lot of times we're operating in silos and not necessarily getting at like the root cause of some of these issues. But just recognizing that there seems to be a clear intersection between, you know, the people don't have enough money at the end of the day after paying their rent to afford food. right? So like, you know, I'm interested in like how we can all come together to work to, you know, solve for that problem.
That's beautiful.
And so I'd also invite folks to, like, if you're interested, you know, even if your organization isn't traditionally a housing organization, if you're interested in, you know, joining the Minneapolis United for Rent Control Coalition or other housing advocacy spaces, I think it makes sense to partner in that way.
That's amazing. Yeah. You know, one thing I have to say towards that, Nicole, is like food is the only thing that connects us all. This council is really being challenged to like trying to figure out how we can use that tool, you know, to, you know, answer these questions. And I'm, you know, we got 2 years here, and we're just starting this year, and I'm hoping by the end of our tenure here, we can see this being implemented on the ground. I know there's an urgency though, especially in places like Harrison neighborhood with the encampment and things like that going on. It's really important that we create spaces to have this conversation. Hopefully in the next couple of months, we can figure out what that looks like. Here, I just got like a message from someone. Let's see.
It was me, Marcus.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just asking for the next thing on the agenda if we can switch to the history before the MFAP, just because Jenny has to leave at 7. So that was all that was.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll return back to that conversation, and I'll see you after this meeting, Nicole. Next on our agenda is just a discussion, the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council timeline presentation here. This is something that's being presented by Kristen Devon Nolan, Jenny Brain, and Patty Bowler. And I'll pass it on to you guys to go ahead.
Thanks, Marcus, and thank you, Grace, for pulling up the slides. So hi, everyone. Again, I'm Kristen Klingler with the Minneapolis Health Department. I'm going to kick things off today with our short presentation. So we know that we have a lot of new members of the Food Council and guests that come to these meetings, and we recognize that you may have some questions about the Food Council's history and how we got to where we are today and the role of the Food Council in Minneapolis's local food system. So tonight, the Executive Committee wanted to devote some time to giving a short historical overview of Homegrown Minneapolis and describe the evolution over the years. So we don't have a lot of time to go into detail about the entire history of Homegrown Minneapolis, but we hope this presentation provides some important background information for you and also sparks your curiosity and maybe raises some additional questions that we can then cover in future meetings. So Grace and Patty and I have prepared a couple of slides that highlight the key activities and milestones from the different phases of Homegrown Minneapolis. And then we've invited Jenny Breen and Devon Nolan to add their thoughts throughout the presentation, since they've both been deeply involved in this work for many, many years. So with that, we're going to dive in. So on the slide that you see here, this is just a basic timeline of the 3 main phases of Homegrown Minneapolis. So it's broken up into 3 phases. Phase 1 was December 2008 to June 2009, and that was really focused on launching the Homegrown initiative, which Jenny and I are going to talk about in just a minute. Phase 2 was from July 2009 to September 2011, and that was focused on implementing some key recommendations that came out of Phase 1. And Patty's going to talk more about that phase a little later on. And then Phase 3 was about establishing the Food Council, and that was happened in January of 2012 and continues to the present day, obviously. So Grace is going to cover that phase, and then Devon may weigh in on that section as well. So next slide, please, Grace. So briefly, Jenny and I are going to talk about Phase 1, launching the Homegrown Minneapolis initiative. Again, starting in December 2008. And if you're like me, you may have a hard time remembering what happened before COVID. So these are some fun facts about what was going on in 2008, just to refresh your memory. My favorite one on here is the most popular food trends, which included bacon and cupcakes, and sometimes both of those things together. So I'll let you read through the other ones. And then we will go on to slide 4, which is really some of the key things that were happening during this Phase 1 period. So things really got started with former Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Rybeck, and he came to the health department and other city staff, and he tasked us with leading this new initiative called Homegrown Minneapolis. But we didn't have a good sense of what that was or what it meant. But the goal was really to bring together community members and city staff to co-create an action plan that would help improve the local food system, everything from growing and processing to distribution and consumption of healthy and sustainably grown local foods. So I had the pleasure of serving as the first Homegrown Minneapolis staff coordinator at the health department. And in my role, I got to work really closely with Patty and other health department and city staff and community members like Jenny. And we spent this time really wrestling with the question of what is the city's role, the city government's role in creating a strong local food system? And how can we bring city enterprise together with community to take meaningful action to improve the local food system? So that included a couple of key things like establishing an advisory committee that would help frame and guide the work. And that was led by 3 great community tri-chairs and supported by city staff. And then we also convened 4 working groups, and they met together over the course of about 9 months or so to develop an extensive set of recommendations around some key topics like farmers markets, urban agriculture, commercial use of locally grown foods. And we presented that report containing more than 50 policy and programmatic recommendations to the City Council in June of 2009. And that really laid the groundwork for phase 2. So I tried to get through that as quickly as I could, Jenny, because I want to give you time to talk about phase 1 from your perspective. You have a lot of great things to share about that. So I'll turn it over to you before we have a little pause for group discussion.
Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry something came up with my family and I have to get out, leave early. But Kristen, you did a great job of summarizing. And part of why we even talked about doing this is because I know although I've been involved in this work for a long time, I work with a lot of people who are in different phases of their involvement, including some who are just getting engaged for the first time in policy work. And there's a lot of questions about how does it work? How quickly does it move? What are we doing? What's our role and responsibility? And I think context is really important and helpful. So as Kristen said, I was a local food, activist. I was a small food business owner. I had a restaurant from 1996 to 2001, and then a catering company. And so I was very engaged in local food from how are regulations going to impact me? And I was also doing a lot of teaching. I was working with youth farm markets way back then. And so what I really want to emphasize is while this came from the mayor and the health department was tasked, it was absolutely an engagement with community members. And that was an incredibly important component about this. So the advisory committee was made up of community members. They definitely worked in the food space, but they were community members. They were not city employees, and they were not representing any specific organization. And the point was to really make this work more accessible. And so that's still a really important foundation of what we're trying to do now and why these are open to the community. And hey, I want to give a shout out to the 2 students who are here today. I'm really happy to hear that because I made this a part of my graduate work. So I think that people are finding that they have access to a city process and a policymaking process is really important. And it was kind of a first, especially in relation to food. Nobody had really been talking about food policy before this. I actually give R.T. Rybeck's wife a lot of credit for pushing this agenda. And the other thing I really want to, for me, a lot of it, my focus, and I was really involved in a lot of the regulatory conversations because other things that we were realizing was that policies that pertain to food were like agriculture policies, and they were not designed to respond to the small nonprofits and the food justice organizations that were emerging. And so we really had to look at kind of, updating what we were talking about and the kinds of requirements and expectations we had. And, from anyone from urban farmers to restaurants who were, buying tomatoes from someone down the street, or just even the fees that people had to pay for different certifications. So that was, for me, especially relevant. And what the other, I'll just mention a couple other things because I could talk for a long time. I think this is really important, is that other parallel initiatives and networks emerged kind of in response or in conjunction with the beginning of this conversation. The two primary ones were the Metro Food Access Network, which became the Metro Food Justice Network, and the Minnesota Food Charter Network, which was absolutely a sort of next step in making policy recommendations. And we learned a lot from that. We learned a lot about things that work and things that probably work better in different ways. And so there's just an incredible wealth of wisdom. I heard someone say today, and I feel like this is really a rich thing, and I'll just sort of finish with this, is he said, I have all this wisdom and it's my responsibility to share it, to pass it on. So people, you should ask. So like when Liz Mullen reached out and said, I just want to talk to you about the Food Council and how it all works. So please feel free to reach out and ask me. I will share whatever wisdom I have. There's a lot of other people with a lot of wisdom in this group. And know that things take time. And so while it feels like we're doing a lot of just sort of talking and revisiting conversations, a lot happens out of that, but policy work is slow. And so we just have to hang in there and just build our collaboration so that we can get stuff done.
Food champion.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Grace, if you'd like to go on to the next slide, we wanted to pause here. So that was your taste of what phase 1 of Homegrown Minneapolis was all about. That's all we have time to go into tonight, but we wanted to open it up to see what questions do you have about the early days of Homegrown Minneapolis? Is there anything specific that you would like to learn more about so that we can maybe present some information in the future or have offline conversations to answer any questions that you have about phase 1 specifically? And there's some examples on the slide if that will help spark specific questions that you might have. If you can't think of anything right now, we'll circle back at the end. You'll have more opportunities. You can put stuff in the chat. That would be fine too. All right, we'll turn it over to Patty to go into phase 2. And again, be thinking about what you might want to know more about each of these phases, and we can come back to that at the end. Thanks, everyone.
Great. And I see Helen says, do you keep an alumni list of homegrown members? That would be a rad group of people to know. And we should, because there are so many rock stars associated with local food work. We used to have a yearly gathering, and maybe with, after COVID, we can come back to that yearly gathering because a lot of our alums would participate in that gathering. So thanks for that question, Helen. So I just wanted to talk briefly about phase 2, and that was from July 2009 to September 2011. And my favorite fun fact from that couple of years was all about the best-selling books, 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, 50 Shades Freed. I don't know if you remember those books, and I think there were movies too. But that came out of that era. If you go to the next slide, please, Grace. So as Kristen mentioned, there were like 50 some recommendations and I don't know how many action steps. Kristen really helped pull all this together in this wonderful report. One of the key ones was how do we create a longer term entity or structure that's really going to guide the city and the community on local foods issues and will be representative of our community. So that was the beginning of the thinking of a food policy council. And so I remember I was pretty involved in that work group along with some key community leaders, and we were pretty systematic. We researched existing food councils from our food policy councils from across the United States. And we looked at, I think we even looked at what was happening in Canada. We tried to kind of uncover some models. And we developed some important conclusions. The first one is that we didn't want to become too bureaucratic or too government focused. What we saw is that some food councils were really part of government, and as a result, they had that government-y feel to them. We also saw food policy councils that were all about community and that didn't have a tie-in with policymakers and with local government, and we knew that wasn't really the way to go either. We also learned that we didn't want to have a total exclusive focus on policy. While I love policy, it's part of my job. Sometimes policy is a turnoff for people. And as Jenny mentioned, policy is slow. So we wanted to combine, policy and learning and education about the food systems, best practices, strategies, etc. And then lastly, we knew that in order to sustain a food council, we needed to have some consistent funding. So as I mentioned, some food councils around the country, they were totally funded by foundations, and foundation funding ebbs and flows. And so we were able to get some general fund dollars from the city in order to hire a homegrown staff person to do this work. Okay, it looks like I froze for a sec, but hopefully I'm unfrozen.
You're doing good.
Okay, great. Okay, it looks like in the chat there was something about a question, how many food councils are there across the US? And Helen may have put that answer in the chat, possibly. Okay, so next slide, Grace. So what we did is we really chose a hybrid structure. Again, one that was rooted in the community, but that also was part of government and had close ties to policymakers. And so in the early years of Homegrown, we had council members and the mayor's office. They were super involved in the creation of Homegrown. And so that made a huge difference. I mean, we also had strong community leaders involved in Homegrown. And as Kristen mentioned earlier, it was really the opportunity to co-create something so that we have community and government coming together. And then I put down kind of the 7 key purposes of our jobs for this burgeoning food council, and wanted to just quickly reflect on what they are, because I have a question in the next slide about whether these things, have we lived up to what our 7 key purposes are? Maybe what's fallen off the list? What do we need to revisit? So again, we wanted to develop innovative policies and strategies to improve the food system. We felt like it was our role to really advise the mayor and the city council and the park board. We've got a relationship as a city government with the park board on food issues. The city used to produce something called sustainability targets that actually came out of Kim's shop. And these were metrics that were created around the food system, and we wanted to provide technical assistance around these local sustainability targets. We're no longer, as a city, we don't develop these sustainability targets anymore. Instead, we've got some other performance measurements targets that we've fed into. We certainly wanted to advance the food system, and we had a number of values here that are important to just relay. We wanted the Food Policy Council to be health promoting, environmentally sustainable, local, resilient, inclusive, equitable, fair, and transparent. So wow, that's a big long laundry list to live up to. Next, again, the recommendations and action steps that Kristen mentioned, we wanted to develop, implement, and evaluate those. We felt that we had a role in providing leadership to the regional food system. Even though we're Minneapolis, we are part of this larger region. And then lastly, celebrate food and use it as a way to build community. and make sure that we're really focused on Minneapolis's many communities and culture. Next slide. So these are just some prompts. And again, as Jenny said, you know, she could talk on and on about this. I could talk on and on about this. You know, something that we should think about, maybe not now because we're running out of time, but did we choose the right model? Was hybrid the right model? Did we avoid or embrace the common Food Council pitfalls that I mentioned? And are some of these purposes that I mentioned no longer relevant or less relevant? And should we be revising our kind of our purpose statement? Grace, maybe we could just have discussion at the end of our presentation.
I think that sounds good. I will jump into phase 3 here. So phase 3 is started with the actual establishment of the Minneapolis Food Council. It started in January 2012 and is still going today, as you all know. To get a sense of what was happening in 2012, I was in 5th grade. The Avengers and the Hunger Games movies were some of the top movies. And also some fashion trends that I'm glad are gone include a lot of mustaches and neon. So we've moved on from that. That was 10 years ago. So as I said, phase 3 started with the establishment of the Minneapolis Food Council with the founding resolution that was passed in September 2011. The first Food Council meeting was held in January 2012, and they've been monthly ever since. As Patty mentioned, the Food Council came out of this recommendation from the phase 2 working group. The structure of having it be a city board and then having shared co-chair leadership with one chair appointed by the mayor, which is Marcus this year, and the other elected by the group, which is Devon this year, was chosen with the goal of creating a sustainable connection to and also standing in the community to make sure we have that sort of hybrid attitude that Patty was talking about. In the past, a lot of the work has been done through forming working groups and task forces with members of the public and the Food Council. These groups would meet usually in the latter part of meetings and sometimes outside of meetings to discuss and work on specific topics of interest related to local food policy. Since 2020, the focus of the Food Council has been on the Minneapolis Food Action Plan. Yay! So working groups haven't been around since then. If you're wondering, like, oh, why? I have heard about these working groups, and why don't we have any right now? And then I'll go into some of the bigger milestones that we've hit since the Food Council started. Some of the biggest topics in terms of policy advocacy have been on urban ag policy and staple foods, as well as interconnected policies that build on those efforts. I was thinking about Will and Marcus when you guys were talking about urban ag and food insecurity, kind of building off, there is precedent, I think, for the Food Council to work on tackling these barriers. The Food Council has done a lot of different things. This is a short list. As Patty and Kristen said, we can't go over all of it, but we have supported amendments to urban agriculture policy and the garden lease program. The Food Council has discussed, researched, and supported amendments to the staple food ordinance. The Food Council has also written a lot of letters of support and recommendations, including on topics such as beekeeping, water access for commercial urban farmers, farm stands, mobile food stores, pollinators, backyard chickens, food carts, regenerative agriculture, and biochar. Those are all at the city, all things that the Food Council has helped support. They've also written letters to things such as the Park Board and for policies such as the Urban Agriculture Activity Plan, the Community Garden Policy, and Parks for All. Finally, there's also been some letters written for Minneapolis Public Schools policies. So there's a lot of opportunity to support things that are happening and add comments or feedback. Another really big thing, as we know, has been launching the Food Action Plan work that started in 2019 and is still going now. And I'll talk a little bit about later about where we're at with that. But that has been a huge milestone in terms of turning the Food Council work into something really exciting in terms of a policy document. And finally, Patty mentioned that there have been a lot of open houses and a food policy forum. Over the years, there's been a lot of opportunities to gather with hundreds of people coming to learn more about the food system and connect in community. So that sounds really fun. And then similar, I have a few questions for what to think about, and we'll open it up for questions about what you want to maybe know about the history of the Food Council. What do you want to learn more about? Some ideas include what specific changes to urban ag policy, what are some of the past working groups? So yeah, are there any questions about the history of Homegrown and Food Council? And feel free also to, as others have said, to email us. Also, I'm sorry, Devon was going to add some things but had to step out. So I'm sure she would love to share some more about her perspective at another time. But yeah, you can email. We hope to keep talking about it. So this is not the end of the conversation. And share, what are your thoughts?
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think it'll do us well to keep, educating people on the history. Such a rich history here, and start sharpening the vision for the future by including more people on the journey here. Are there any questions?
I don't know if I have any more questions, but just comments. Thank you so much for this history, and bringing it to Jenny Breen and then seeing all of this is just really wonderful for someone like me that's new to this. And really love that, Patty, when you spoke about policy and the community and really kind of doing this hybrid version. I just see such a huge benefit to that. And then a big benefit to this group to be able to bounce ideas and hear what everyone is working on and how we can all kind of contribute to each other's projects. And I will say, out of, COVID response to everything, that was kind of when I really joined in, being a part of starting Minnesota Central Kitchen and seeing a ton of nonprofits work together, which I don't know has always been something that's happened in the past. And so just really thankful for this and for all of you. So
We appreciate that. Yeah, amazing job, you guys. And sometimes we just like hearing, that we're in the right direction, and so I really appreciate that statement. Yeah. Are there any other questions or statements? I want to be mindful of everybody's time. We can have this conversation. I talk a lot, so like this could go on forever. I'm just trying to. I'm keeping reserve. Yeah. Is there any other questions?
I guess I have a quick question. I'd be curious what sort of like membership has looked like in the past, and if there have been with community members, like any, not like restrictions on membership, but I guess I'm wondering specifically about like young people's involvement and youth in the space, and kind of like what that's looked like in the past.
Can I just answer that? That's a great question, because we had linked with, so Minneapolis has a youth coordinating board, which is all around. It's like a multi-cross jurisdictional group, looking at how the city, the county, the park board better serves youth. And so we went to the youth coordinating board, which has a youth congress, and said, we really want to involve you in this work. And so we had a couple representatives, this was a long time ago now, who were part of the Food Council. And we weren't, and maybe we just didn't work hard enough. We weren't able to like sustain that relationship, and they would come to some meetings and not others. And it was probably because it was a bunch of adults talking, and maybe not capturing their imagination. So I think that's a really good question, and maybe it's something we should look at, as a Food Council. How do we do a better job with that? And Kristen, any comments from your perspective? Do you remember that, or was that before your time?
I think that what you said was accurate, Patty, that
Okay.
there's been some attempts to involve youth in different ways. And for one reason or another, it's not something we've been able to sustain. But I think the youth voice is so powerful when it comes to advocating for policy and identifying policy change and things that need to be done. So I think future conversations would be great to figure out how to re-engage with groups like that.
Yeah, just to add to that, in my experience as a youth worker and someone on the ground constantly, there is a rhythm to everything we're doing. And it's based on the changes of the seasons. I think usually we're leading these groups and topics based on our schedule. What we need to understand is kids are in school. We cannot interrupt their processes. We need to give them an opportunity to name their own time and when they're available. And I usually struggle because usually when these things come to my attention, I'm in the middle of something with an army of babies. And I do not want to take away from the fact that I got them talking today. I got them moving. And so I really want to name that. One thing I do want to exercise this season though, is that coming this fall, I do want to spend all my efforts, first of all, introducing this council to my army of babies on the north side. And hopefully by this fall, we can share with you everything we did this summer, which is usually pretty incredible. And then also give them an opportunity to spend the time between going back to school and actually naming what they've experienced throughout the season with the council and things like that, so they can have a voice here. I think that's a good place to start. I just want to say that. I hope that kind of answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, thanks so much. And definitely an area I'm excited about too. So would love to continue conversations along that lane in the future.
Nice, yeah. I'll definitely be reaching out, by the way. Yeah. Are there anything else? It looks like I'm just being mindful of the time. We have about 9 minutes here now. Grace?
Yeah, real quick, Keely asked if the council has ever sent support letters for statewide legislation on hunger relief or urban ag dollars. I haven't found any of that in the agenda, but I'm quite possible that it occurred. I will say that. Ask Patty.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think we have. We also work through the city's IGR, intergovernmental relations staff, and they're at the Capitol. So that's a pretty effective way to advocate too.
Yeah. Capacity around this stuff. Ooh, that's another topic. Also, I just want to be mindful to remind everybody, I know that everyone is dealing with a little bit of fatigue in this work from the past couple of years. And we always forget that because we jump right in willing to go and really not think about our own selves at the end of the day. It's good to be exhausted for a reason, but just be mindful of your own wellness and don't make busy work. Focus on we need you. So we don't need anyone else falling off or, burning out and things like that. So, really take care of yourself and make sure that your organizations, wherever you're coming from, understands the importance of you as an asset. So I'll just leave you with that. Is there anything else? Any other announcements?
We're doing member announcements right now.
I mean, anything before we adjourn here. We have
Perfect. My old colleagues at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture are working on an application to the USDA, the federal government, to work on how we can get more local food into assistance programs. And they're doing what's, I think, a pretty innovative approach for state government and actually have a public comment period on their application so folks can review it and weigh in. And I know there's a lot of expertise in this group and you all know a lot of other great people. So I'll put that chat or put it in the chat, and Grace, if you can send it around. It closes next Monday, the 18th. But it's a really cool opportunity to bring a lot of extra money into the state. So thanks to anyone who's energized and can give some brilliance to that important effort.
Awesome. And we'll look for that from Grace. Also, happy Earth Day. There's awesome things happening. Friday is Earth Day next week. Saturday, about 4 or 5 neighborhoods in North Minneapolis will be leading people outside around just cleaning up their blocks and foods and treats and coffee and tea and hot chocolate and stuff. Yeah. Without, if there are no other announcement.
There are a few.
Oh, nice. Yeah, let's go. We got 5 minutes.
We are hiring for Tamara's replacement. So that is in your agenda. There's a link in your agenda to that job. The job closes tomorrow. So, I mean, I think it's open the whole day tomorrow. So it's time for a last minute or, submission. Just wanted to mention that. And then our next meeting will be in person. I think the date is May 11th, and we're looking for a spot. We have a backup spot downtown at our new building. The health department and a bunch of other city departments moved into a new building, which is very lovely, or as good as it gets for government workers. Anyway, but we're also, we could meet in the community, and we've done that a lot in the past. We just need to make sure that the room is ADA compliant. It has to be large enough to make sure that we're physically distancing because of COVID, and we plan to, offer masks if people want to wear those. And, access to transportation or good parking, that's another criteria. So if you could, food council members, if you want to host us, we'd be up for that. Just the space has to meet those criteria. So if you could reach out to Grace and let her know if there's a space that would accommodate the food council, that'd be lovely.
Beautiful.
Just to add on to that, right now there is not a hybrid option due to legal requirements that our clerk's office is really trying to figure out a way that we can have the technological means to make us fit the legal requirements of open meetings, but just so everyone knows, there's not going to be the option for either members or the public to call in or video call at the moment, but they're working on it. We know it really sucks. It's hard, but I just want to know that we hope to all see you there in person. We'll do our best to stay safe, but just wanted to make that announcement so that we can hopefully see everyone there and try to make it a fun time. Just despite the big change. So yes, email me ideas, and we'll also talk about it at the executive committee meeting because we have to, plan ahead.
Beautiful. Yeah, we're going to have options. Anything else?
I think we'll give an update on the Minneapolis Food Action Plan at the next meeting, and
yes,
devote some time to the survey results. Yes. We weren't able to talk about that at today's or tonight's meeting, but so just that was on the agenda. Just know that we'll cover it next time.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
If anyone wants a preview, we got about 1,000 responses to the citywide survey, so that's a little sneak peek at the data. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm excited. That's my new favorite word, data. I just want to say that. Okay. Well, with that, it looks like we're right on time. We have completed all the items on the agenda for this meeting. So thank you to everybody, the council members, the community members for joining us tonight and participating in our discussions and asking questions. I hope all the information actually helped you better understand what we're trying to do here. And you can always reach out to us at homegrown@minneapolismn.gov. Are there anything else, Grace, that you wanted to bring up? Anybody else wanted to mention anything? Council members? or staff before we adjourn? Okay, well, sorry, trying to keep on time. If not, without objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Our next Homegrown Food Council meeting will be on, let me just double check that date here. Looks like May 11th. Does that sound about right, Patty?
Yes, that's it.
That's right.
Beautiful. And I'll see all your beautiful faces on May 11th. And yeah, without objection, I declare the meeting adjourned.